Hi everyone, welcome to Here We Are, Brattleboro's community talk show. I'm Wendy O'Connell, and our guest today is Eduardo Melendez. Eduardo is the Community Engagement and Communications Manager of the ECDC Multicultural Community Center here on Burge Street, which is in the SD Oregon complex. He's also a photographer and photojournalist and an instructor at the Insight Photography Center on Main Street here in Bratt. Eduardo and his family came to Brattleboro from Puerto Rico in 2021. Welcome, Eduardo.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm so glad to have you come and help us understand the ECDC, which, just to let folks know up front, is the Ethiopian Community Development Council.
That's correct.
Yes, okay. But we're going to go back to you to start with, and you were born and raised in Puerto Rico?
Yep, born and raised on the island of Puerto Rico. I lived there most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Catholic school. I graduated. I did my bachelor's degree in psychology, and I did a minor in photography.
Mm-hmm.
I loved photography so much that I skipped my studies on psychology and went and got a master's at the Miami International University of Art and Design for photography, and that was a phenomenal experience. My first time living outside of the island. At that moment, I lived 3 years outside of Puerto Rico to complete my degree. I did a lot of art shows. I had great experience documenting and directing Biennial in Mexico, from Miami, Florida to Mexico. And that was actually my first interaction with international people. We had people from Afghanistan, France, Germany, Spain, Italy, everywhere in South America. It was a big exhibition. So that was sort of like my first grip on working with an international crowd, and came back home to the island. I lived there for a couple of years as a photographer and photojournalist. And at some point, my family and I decided that it was time to leave Puerto Rico and move to Vermont.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're going to get back to that. I wanted to ask you, though, when you were growing up, you were bilingual? You learned both Spanish and English?
Yes. I had cable TV. So, yes, Spanish is my first language. We do take English in Puerto Rico from kindergarten. So we're always taking English classes until we graduate.
Yeah.
Many courses in college require you to take 1 or 2 English courses as well. So yeah, I've been bilingual since I can remember.
When you read, do you read in both languages?
Yes, I do.
You do?
Yes.
And growing up, did you have any particular, like, did you do music or photography?
I wrote.
You wrote?
I still do.
You do?
I used to write short stories and poetry.
Yeah?
That was like my little outlet, my little artistic outlet. I did photography,
Yeah.
of course, but I did a lot of writing, a lot of essays.
And did your family support that?
They did. They always did. They always did. My very first camera was given to me by one of my aunts. So it was
What kind?
A Vivitar. The last model that came out that wasn't electronic. So it still works. That camera is actually older than me, and it still works.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot to be said for that. Metal parts.
Yeah, metal parts, that's it.
And so when you started thinking about leaving your homeland, which I'm sure was not an easy decision to make because you had extended family there as well, right?
Yes, I do.
So can you talk a little bit about what that was like? You had a wife and 3 kids, I think, at that time?
At the moment, yes.
Yes. Yeah, what was that process like for you?
It was very hard.
Yeah.
It was potentially one of the hardest decisions that I've made with my wife as heads of our family. We both had lived in the States before, and I think this is the same for everyone. You always want to go back home. You always want to stay home. So, like I said before, I did my master's, and I went home, and I had the expectation of never having to leave. But because of the problems of infrastructure, power goes out every other day. Water is unreliable as well. Prices are skyrocketing. Inflation is hitting the island really hard. There's island-wide gentrification because you can buy a 3-bedroom home for $120,000, which is, for those who have the capital, right?
Yes.
Easy and accessible. But then everything is being turned into an Airbnb.
Oh.
So it's quite literally every livable zone is turning into a sort of resort area. And spaces for my family are becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. So we had a little foresight, and in trying to be proactive instead of reactive, we started looking into the U.S. mainland. We were also very aware of climate change, so we took that into consideration as well, and we thought, okay, so where can we move for when climate change strikes hard, we are still in a livable zone. And we started looking at the north, and we saw Vermont, and we saw those reasons to move to Vermont videos in YouTube, and we researched for jobs, and we researched for schools, which was another main priority.
Yeah.
And we researched for the health system. And we came in March and scouted to see if this is really what we wanted to do, and decided this is it.
Wow. So out of all of this, out of all of the northern states,
Yes.
right, this is the one that you chose.
Yes, Vermont.
Yeah.
It's a really safe place for biracial families, and I can say freely that I can walk into a supermarket and I get great service, and I don't get weird looks. So in that sense, the Vermont community has been extremely welcoming.
Yeah.
I have no regrets.
And you said that when you first got here, the help and support that you got was from people and not organizations.
Correct.
Yeah, that sounds
Correct.
kind of remarkable.
Correct. We landed on June 24. By June 25th, we had moved into what is still our home, and it was amazing. You know, one morning I tried to open my front door and I couldn't, because there were boxes of food
Wow.
left at our doorsteps.
Wow.
And to this day, whoever you are, thank you. They didn't leave a note, so it was a selfless act, and this happened for the better part of the first 6 to 7 months that we lived in Vermont.
And this was also during the pandemic.
This was also during
Just pointing that out
the
as
pandemic,
as
yes.
well. So, Eduardo, in coming to such a different way of life, really, did you find you and your family actually relaxing, having less stress, settling in?
Not in the first few months. It's a learning curve.
Right.
But yes, the ability to say, okay, I'm gonna go to a hospital and get service.
Right.
The Green Mountain Care from Vermont has done miracles for my family, and for the services they've been able to receive here in Vermont, which is something we don't really have in Puerto Rico. We don't really have back home. And having 4 children being prone to all sorts of accidents and
Yes.
illnesses and all that, we needed a medical system that that worked.
Yes, and that's been working for you.
That's been working.
Yeah, you start settling in here. What did you do right off the bat? Because you had a couple jobs.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the main reason why it was specifically Vermont is because I applied for a job, and in a day I had an answer. One of the things we did when we came back in March last year was actually I had the job interview at CNS Wholesale Grocers. It's not exactly what people would call a professional job, but it was a job that was well paying enough for us to put our feet on the ground
Right.
while other things came up. So I was working 13-hour shifts, minus 15 degrees Fahrenheit, nonstop.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds like it could be exhausting, and away from your family for that long.
The hardest thing was my family, because I think the body gets used to the cold, and it's great exercise. But then I would leave my house at 11 a.m. and come back at 1:30, 2 a.m.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't see my kids, I wouldn't see my wife.
Right.
And I'm a family person. Family to me is extremely important.
Yeah.
So
when did the ECDC come into your
July this year.
So it was
July.
a year later.
Yeah,
a year
later.
after you got here.
A year later. They were looking for a community engagements and communications manager for the Multicultural Community Center. I applied, and I had my couple interviews with Joe and Thomas, and here I am.
ECDC stands for the Ethiopian Community Development Council, which was established in 1983. I checked this out myself to find out. And it was founded by a gentleman who was a Peace Corps trainer, a UNESCO fellow, and also a refugee from Ethiopia.
Yes. ECDC is one of the 9 federally recognized resettlement agencies in the United States.
And its aim is resettlement and empowering refugees and immigrants as well. So in each community that it is in, it may be dealing with refugees or immigrants from many different countries.
One, the key difference of ECDC is that we try to make it as immigrant run as possible. That's why, for example, Joe, our director, he's from Liberia.
Yes.
We have our legal navigator, who's from Afghanistan. We have caseworkers who are from Afghanistan. Right now, our technology department person is from Afghanistan. Our assistant finance is from Afghanistan.
Wow.
So we do have Americans in ECDC, but in the end, the goal is also for it to be as much as possible refugee-led.
They've all come with these skills that you've been able to direct and hone. That's really wonderful.
Many of them have their own skills, right? Many of them have studies, or lawyers, or nurses, or they have other manual skills. They're welders or carpenters. So they're very skilled, and they are extremely hardworking. I think that some of the employers of our Vermont community can attest to that. We have people in places like Against the Grain, here in Putney Road on the wood flooring plank factory. So they're everywhere.
Doing lots of different things. Are the women working as well?
Some women are working. Yes, some women are working.
And is that unusual in that community?
Yes. In the Afghan community, women are usually stay home, taking care of the kids, taking care of the house. And I'm gonna jump right into the things we do at the Multicultural Community Center. Part of what we have as a goal is for everyone to be involved and invested in the community. So we teach the men and the women, but talking about the women, we teach the women English. They have the sewing team, so they can create groups and learn amongst themselves how to sew.
Yeah.
We are now tackling a little bit of mental health. We have yoga classes on Thursdays for the women.
Yeah.
And the reason I say this is because we want to get them out of the house.
Yeah.
Right? We want to get them within the community.
Right.
We want them to be together, even if it's at the Multicultural Community Center for a couple hours.
Yeah.
And well, one of the challenges that we saw in the beginning was that, of course, they're taking care of their little children. So we created a group of childminders, most of them volunteers from here, from Vermont, who come to the center and take care of the children for 1 or 2 hours while women are in class.
Yes, and that that brings up the fact that you have many volunteers
Yes.
involved and partners.
Yes.
And your main partners in all of this are the BDCC, another acronym, excuse me, the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation,
Yes.
which is a private nonprofit, and SIT,
Yes.
which is
SIT World Learning. Yep.
yes,
And I must say, BAL, Vermont Adult Learning, as well.
Yeah.
We're partnered, and they come to the Multicultural Community Center. They're teachers, and they help us with teaching English on basic, intermediate, advanced, and recently we added orthography to our courses.
You added what?
Orthography, so they can write.
Oh, great
Yeah.
word. And I hope they learn cursive.
Hopefully.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier, how kids are not learning cursive anymore. One of our great producers, Maria Dominguez, does the filming at Brooks Library, and you were on a panel with some other folks. What was very interesting about this panel was that there were people from many different not many, I think 6 of you were on the panel, but talking about the Center for Asylum Seekers Project, CASP, which is a grassroots organization
Yes.
In town, which was, I believe it was established when we knew that Afghan refugees were going to be coming in. And then you from the ECDC, and one of the art lords
Yes.
was on as well.
Yes, Abdullah.
Yes, and it was a great discussion about how many people are invested and doing so many proactive things.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's part of the belief that having immigrants come in, it's a good thing. Brattleboro and Vermont in general, one of the floating issues, right, that people talk about, it's aging population.
Yeah.
And this concerns BDCC a lot because they focus on how to improve the economic development of the area. And if you don't have working people, then you don't have a solid tax base, and
Right.
things start dwindling and services become affected. Bringing in and the work we're doing together with them and the rest of our partners is revitalizing not only Brattleboro,
Yeah.
but the New England area. We are bringing in people who are young, who have young families, who have children of school age, and you're bringing them in here to stay. You're bringing them in here to set their roots, and you're bringing them in here so they can grow and multiply, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's happening. We just 2 days ago we had a new Afghan baby
Oh.
be born.
Uh-huh.
So that is going to help in the future and the development of Brattleboro and Vermont. And you can already see how the refugees, how the Afghans and everybody else, it's enriching
Yes.
Brattleboro.
Yes, and I think, that's, there are a couple of things about that. One is that having a center, a community center, where folks from one country are coming together and learning various things. They're creating their own community. A lot of them, I'm sure, didn't know each other before this. So instead of this whole notion that we've carried for a really long time about assimilation into the United States, this is a different concept.
Yes.
It's a different concept, and it's so healthy because our communities are only going to be growing.
Yes.
And to have the diversity that's, as they say, baked in, you know, to a community makes such a difference. And they're bringing so many different talents and skills and points of view as well.
Yes.
Another one of the supports that you have is through money and people supporting you in that way, which I assume is sort of the general routes that a lot of organizations are taking. So it's grants.
ECDC, we run through donations, grants, and foundations, and you know, donors who help us get the programs going.
So if viewers wanted to make a donation this year, they could write a check to the ECDC.
They can write a check to the Ethiopian Community Development Council.
Yep.
They can bring it themselves to Birch Street, or they can go to our administrative offices in Hardwood Way.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, we can have that information at the end of the show.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that every little bit helps.
Every little bit helps.
Yes. I wonder, too, Eduardo, if you could kind of, I was there the other day. I was lucky enough to have a tour of the place, and it's for folks who are familiar with the SD buildings over on Birch Street. You know that those are big buildings. And the ECDC has one floor in one of those buildings with all of these different rooms in it, and including a child minding room, which is a phrase I love, child minding, you know, because children should mind as well as one minding them. But if you could give us just sort of a snapshot of what a regular day is like there.
Well, you get there in the morning, depending on the day. English classes start at 10 a.m. So by 10, you start seeing people coming in and out. Busiest days are Tuesday and Thursdays. We have our case workers come into our offices and work directly with our refugees. You have the Department of Labor sending over some boots on the ground to help our refugees land jobs or switch jobs. And we have classes all the way through 5. So
5 p.m.
5 p.m. So it's busy. It's busy all the time. You come in and someone always needs help, and you lend them a hand.
You know, speaking of boots on the ground, I know that you actually did get a huge donation of boots.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. Through Keen and Sam's Outfitters, they donated 120 pair of boots mixed for women, children, and men, just to help them get ready for Vermont winter.
For a cold winter, that's right. So for some folks, this will be their first or second winter.
For some folks, this will be their second. But we got people who are just experiencing 40 and 30 degrees and are asking, what is this?
Yeah, that's right. And they haven't seen the snow yet. Right?
Yes. One thing to mention, we do, of the many partners that we have, BDCC, CASP, VAL, SIT, World Learning, we do work also with St. Michael's Church, and they co-sponsor a family of Afghans. Up in Bennington County, we have BCOA, who also has co-sponsors helping with the refugee population up north. And right here in downtown, we also work with Carry Me Home. So that's where we direct our families whenever they have a need, especially in winter. We all know that coats and jackets can be very expensive, and that's a way to sort of soften the winter blow
Yes,
for
and
clothes.
I know that there are boxes around town and also in Putney and other areas for winter coats, especially. I think the Jewish Community Center and the Unitarian
Yes.
Church in town are also partners with you folks.
And the Rotary Club
Yes,
also has
Rotary,
a
right.
family, and they've done donations.
And Lions Club.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a lot of people.
It's a community effort,
It
and
is.
and I think, and it goes to mention, and this goes to every single volunteer and co-sponsor out there. I firmly believe that our success is due to your efforts. You're in touch every day with these individuals, with these families. You are our eyes, ears, and hands to work with Afghans outside of the community center. And I have to say, most of our population is from Afghanistan, but we did receive a family from Guatemala, and we have a dedicated co-sponsors team for them too. And there are going to be many more pouring in next year.
We've had a big influx of newcomers coming to Vermont within 2 years. And it's refugees and immigrants, but it's also pandemic relocators.
Yes.
And climate refugees,
Yes.
which we will probably see more of.
Yes.
So the work that you folks are doing, and all of your partners and volunteers and everyone, are really, it feels like laying the groundwork for something that's going to be established here in Brattleboro.
Yes, I do believe so as well.
Yeah.
I do believe that this might have been started because of the crisis in Afghanistan, but this is not the end.
Right.
And you can see every day the effects of the climate crisis around the globe. You can see the unrest around the globe, and we are a welcoming community here in Brattleboro. So my expectation is that the number will increase,
Yeah.
and that Brattleboro and Vermont as a whole is going to go from a very white state to a very multicultural and diverse area.
Yes.
Which is, it is the best gift for generations to come.
Yeah.
The diversity and everything.
Yes, and it does feel like, again, Brattleboro is a great sized town for this kind of melting pot.
Yes.
In a real kind of way, and also, again, establishing these things here, and Vermont too.
Yes.
How many refugees are there in Brattleboro? How
In
many
Brattleboro?
immigrants and refugees?
So we've resettled in Brattleboro about 70 individuals. And in Bennington County, the number that I have is 33. There's these numbers shift.
Yeah.
These are to date the official numbers, but we have to look at the people who out-migrate, people who come through ECDC and they have family in other states, so they move out to be with their families.
Yeah.
But the opposite happens as well. We have families bringing either directly from wherever they are taking refuge at the moment, either Afghanistan or Qatar or any other country in the area.
Right.
So they bring them here, so they don't come through our
I see.
through our channels. We find out about them later, or we don't find out about them at all. We have to their babies being born as well. I know of individuals in Vermont who are co-sponsoring families privately, also families that come in not through our means.
Yes.
So this number is the number of people that we've helped.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Well, Eduardo, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It was wonderful to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And wonderful to hear these stories and to realize how deeply a part of the community this has already become.
Yes, it is. Brattleboro and Vermont will change forever. You'll see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you for joining us today and to hearing all about the ECDC, the Multicultural Community Center, and all of the amazing folks, as Eduardo said, the folks in town who are doing fabulous work to support all of this and to support really a new Vermont. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.